raises some real issues.
Great. Thanks, Mr. Chopra. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Vance, Senator Menendez of New Jersey is recognized.
Good to see you, Mr. Chopra. While some banks have either decreased or eliminated overdraft fees altogether, in large part due to increased scrutiny and oversight, banks still collected an estimated $7.7 billion in 2022 in overdraft and non-sufficient fund fees. Furthermore, a recent report from California state regulators showed that 30 credit unions earned half or more of their net profit just from overdraft and NSF fees. Director, who typically pays for the expensive overdraft fees that banks and credit unions charge?
It's typically families who live paycheck to paycheck, the lowest income.
So from your perspective, what can be done at the CFPB to rein in these excessive fees?
Well, we've taken a number of actions on the enforcement side, supervision. We are also looking at where there may be rules to rein in some of these abuses. At the end of the day, we know we'll want people to be able to access credit, but sometimes it is not subject to the normal competitive forces, and they can really be gouged. And so there has been many institutions that have shifted. The vast majority of institutions, I think, are doing a good job, but there are many bad actors that we have to deal with.
So you are considering a rule?
Yes.
Well, overdraft fees are one major reason why so many Americans are still hesitant to enter the formal financial system. So I look forward to what you do in this regard. I was pleased to see the CFPB's proposed rule earlier this month establishing supervisory authority over large non-banks with person-to-person payment apps such as Venmo, PayPal, Cash App, mobile peer-to-peer payment applications, which are growing ever more popular and are expected to facilitate transactions worth over $1 trillion this year. You and I and several other members of this committee have spoken in written letters about the rampant scams and frauds on these apps, as well as the difficulty consumers can face in being made whole as a result of these activities. Can you explain how the proposed rule will make these apps more secure and protect users?
Well, we've seen a number of issues with these big apps. You mentioned fraud, but there's also very significant data collection occurring on them. In many ways, it resembles what we see in China with WeChat Pay and Alipay. So we've proposed a rule to be able to supervise them for these existing federal laws. No new one, there's no expansion, and we think that that will help level the playing field and make sure that these consumer payments companies operating outside of the banking system are protecting consumers the way they ought to be under federal law.
Well, I look at the rule as an important first step in creating a fairer and more secure digital payment ecosystem, and I look forward to your continued work in this regard.
Well, thank you so much. And as I've mentioned with many of you, we are also thinking about how these apps are trafficking remittances. And I think we'll continue to look there to make sure that those sending remittances get a low competitive cost and they have the same consumer protections.
Let me turn to student loan repayment, which has restarted. Borrowers have experienced a multitude of issues with their services. I've heard from constituents who have noted extremely long wait times to hear from a servicer representative and incomplete and unhelpful information from automated systems. On top of that, millions of borrowers have been moved to a different servicer. Earlier this year, I sent a letter to the Department of Education asking that they get answers from Moella, the servicer who manages the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program, regarding the issue borrowers were confronting with a return to repayment. Given these and many more issues, I'm pleased to see the CFPB open an investigation into Moella, Nelnet, Ed Financial, and Aidvantage's customer service practices in October. Can you speak more to what the CFPB is doing to hold student loan services accountable and support borrowers?
Well, we know that many of the servicers during the pandemic made a business decision to lay off or to otherwise, no longer employ a number of employees. They now are ramping up, and there has been issues where people are experiencing very long wait times or getting incorrect bills. I can't comment too much further other than to say we are certainly working with the Department of Education and the states to address any violations of law.
Well, the repayment process has begun. It's hitting many heavily. getting the right answers and being able to speak to a servicer that actually services you is critical. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, Senator Menendez. Senator Haggerty of Tennessee is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Welcome, Director. I have three